Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep with Jordan Peterson, exploring his pretty popular book, 12 Rules for Life. We've got some excerpts from you listeners, and we'll try to find the nuggets, the ideas that'll stick with you, and help us do that. As always, we have our expert guide ready to dive in.
Absolutely. I'm fascinated by Peterson's work. It always seems to spark deep thinking, so I'm excited to see what we find in these excerpts.
Okay, great. Well, let's jump right in with one of Peterson's most, I guess you could say, vivid analogies, the lobster. He compares humans to lobsters, which might seem a little strange, but he uses it to talk about dominance hierarchies. What do you make of that?
It's a really interesting way to illustrate something that is very real. Both lobsters and humans have this neurochemical called serotonin, and it plays a key role in mood. And Peterson makes this connection between serotonin levels and social status in both species.
So the more dominant the lobster, the more serotonin it has.
Yeah.
And the same goes for humans.
Exactly. Those who show confidence, assertiveness, traits we link with higher social standing, they usually have higher serotonin levels. And on the other hand, those who are in lower positions often have less serotonin.
Okay, so it affects more than just mood then. He's saying it impacts our well-being.
Yes, he's saying it has a big impact on well-being. Lower serotonin is linked to more anxiety, makes you vulnerable to stress, even shorter lifespan.
Wow, so where we stand socially not only affects how we feel, but also how healthy we are, and even how long we live.
That's exactly the point Peterson is making. It really raises the question, what can we do to improve our standing? Not just for the social recognition, but for our own health and
And
resilience.
he suggests we can sort of hack our neurochemistry.
Yeah, by consciously acting in ways that project confidence and dominance, we can actually influence our own serotonin levels.
So standing tall, eye contact,
Mm.
speaking assertively.
Yeah.
It's not all just about appearances then.
No, it can have a real impact on how we feel internally, almost like tricking our brains into feeling more confident, which then leads to all sorts of positive changes physically.
So even when we don't feel confident, it's important to project confidence.
It's not about being fake, but more about understanding that connection between our minds and bodies and using it to help ourselves.
Fascinating. He also talks about sleep and routines and how important they are for keeping everything in balance, especially with our modern lives that are so often disruptive.
Absolutely. Consistent sleep, a good daily routine, they create order in our lives, and that order can really help regulate mood and help us handle stress better. It's about getting in sync with our natural rhythms.
And this leads into his concepts of order and chaos.
Yes, he talks about order as what we know, what's structured and predictable.
And chaos is the opposite then.
Yeah, chaos is the unknown, the unpredictable, the stuff that can mess up even the best plans.
Throws a wrench in the works,
Exactly.
like a global pandemic.
Exactly. No matter how much we want order, chaos is going to happen.
So how do we handle that push and pull between order and chaos? What does Peterson say?
He compares it to walking on thin ice. Sometimes it's solid and safe, and you know where you stand. Other times it cracks, and you're plunged into the icy unknown.
That's a really strong image.
His point is we have to be ready for both. We need the stability of order, but also the ability to deal with chaos, because it will come.
Finding that balance sounds like a lifelong challenge.
It is, but it's a challenge worth taking on.
Let's pause here for a minute.
Give everyone a chance to think about this. How order and chaos show up in their lives. Where do you need stability? And where do you run into the unexpected?
Take a moment to reflect, and we'll be back in a bit to continue our exploration.
Back with you.
Yeah, ready to keep going. I'm really interested in what Peterson has to say about self-improvement. He's got a kind of different take on how we should track our progress,
Right, he warns us about comparing ourselves to other people.
which is so easy to do these days.
Mm.
With social media, everyone's showing off their best selves. It's easy to feel like you're not measuring up.
Yeah, it can lead to a lot of unhappiness. Peterson suggests we compare ourselves to who we were yesterday, not to someone else today.
So focusing on our own growth,
Exactly. Shifting the focus from what others think to what we're actually accomplishing.
recognizing that everyone's on their own path.
And that real growth often means being uncomfortable, maybe even experiencing some pain along the way.
And this ties into his ideas about sacrifice.
Yes, the willingness to give up something now for something better later.
I find it interesting how he connects that to the biblical idea of sacrifice.
He sees a deep psychological principle there, delaying gratification, enduring hardship to reach a meaningful goal. That's key to human development.
Makes you think about what you're willing to sacrifice. To become a better version of yourself, what are we willing to give up for the things that really matter to us?
That's a good question to ask ourselves.
And Peterson doesn't shy away from the darker parts of human nature either. He talks about the story of Cain and Abel, exploring jealousy, resentment, and violence.
Yeah, it reminds us that even the most civilized societies have a dark side.
And he doesn't just keep it in the past. He connects it to things happening today, like mass shootings and extremism.
He's pushing us to acknowledge the potential for evil that exists in all of us.
Not just out there in the world, but inside each of us.
It's not an easy thing to think about.
But I think it's important. If we want to create a better world, we have to understand the darkness that's within us.
I agree.
Peterson also talks about the importance of listening, really listening to other people. He says meaningful conversation is powerful, the kind where you try to understand someone else's perspective.
Being present and attentive, setting aside your own assumptions and biases.
He's critical of those conversations where you're just waiting for your turn to talk, not really hearing what the other person is saying.
It's a subtle difference, but so important. Active listening is a skill. You have to practice it and be intentional about it. It's about valuing the other person's voice and their story.
Building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly. And this connects to his critique of ideology.
He says ideology can be dangerous when it puts people into groups.
He challenges that way of looking at the world,
He's all about recognizing individual uniqueness,
seeing the value in each person.
a call for empathy and understanding, even when you disagree with someone. Let's take another pause here.
Let those ideas sink in for a bit. Think about how often you really listen, not just waiting to speak, but really trying to understand. And how often do you see people as part of a group instead of as individuals?
These are tough questions that make us look at our own thoughts and actions. So Peterson also offers some guidance, especially when it comes to raising kids.
He has some pretty strong ideas about raising kids who can handle anything life throws at them.
Right. He says parents should be like stand-ins for the real world.
Preparing kids for the challenges ahead instead of trying to protect them from everything.
It's all about finding that balance,
Right.
between giving support and letting them become independent.
Exactly. You have to equip them with the skills and resilience they need to deal with whatever comes their way.
He tells this funny story about disciplining his son, emphasizing the importance of setting boundaries.
Right, and teaching them how to behave in a way that people will like.
It's a good reminder that parenting is tough. You need to be firm, but also compassionate.
And a sense of humor doesn't hurt.
Now, Peterson also gets into some big questions about the meaning of life. He explores these ideas through the Bible and philosophy.
Yeah, connecting these ancient stories to the things we worry about today, like suffering and purpose and what it means to be human.
He even compares the state of modern man to Adam and Eve after they're kicked out of the Garden of Eden,
Burdened with knowledge and knowing that we're all going to die.
and all the suffering that comes with being alive.
It makes you ask, how do we find meaning when the world feels so chaotic and pointless?
Peterson says we find meaning through responsibility.
Through taking charge of our lives and trying to make the world a better place.
He offers some practical advice too. Set goals, be disciplined, focus on what you can control.
It's like a call to action, to step up and be the best version of yourself.
Not just for yourself, but for something bigger.
For the good of everyone around you.
As we're wrapping up here, I'm struck by how often Peterson uses stories from the Bible and mythology,
He sees those stories as full of wisdom.
like timeless lessons about what it means to be human.
He's not saying we have to take them literally.
Right, it's more about understanding the patterns and archetypes they represent.
He says these stories have survived for so long because they speak to something deep inside us, something that goes beyond time and culture.
Like tapping into a shared understanding of the human experience.
And that's how he connects his ideas to these ancient narratives, using the power of myth and metaphor to make his points.
Well, I think it's time to bring our exploration to a close. It's been a fascinating journey through the ideas of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, from the brains of lobsters to the search for meaning in a chaotic world.
Peterson's work definitely makes you think, but it also gives us some real insights into being human, insights that can help us live more meaningful and fulfilling lives.
He reminds us that life is a journey, full of challenges, but also full of possibilities.
He encourages us to embrace responsibility, to be resilient, and to strive for excellence in everything we do.
And most importantly, he reminds us that we're not alone in this journey. We're all connected, and we can support each other along the way.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, and we encourage you to keep exploring Peterson's ideas.
Take what we've discussed and think about it. See how it applies to your own life.
Remember, the journey of self-discovery never really ends. There's always more to learn.